So, welcome to this episode of the Holly Hughes Podcast. Today, I'm really excited for a myriad of reasons to speak with Tod Goldberg. I even highlighted, look at that. That's your bio. And your bio is way too fucking long to read. And I hate when people read bios. But
maybe get a Sherpa to read my bio.
It's good. It's impressive. But like for me, the summation is you're prolific, you're really good, and you mentor other people. That's all I can think about. But I'm going to read some of it because
cool. I look forward to hearing this.
It's well worth it. Tod Goldberg is a New York Times bestselling author of 16 books. And of these books, many have been a finalist or won the Hammett Prize, the Southwest Book of the Year, the Strand Critics Award, International Thriller of the Year, and many more. His short fiction and essays appear widely and have been honored with a selection in Best American Mystery, Suspense, and Best American Essays. Todd is a professor of creative writing at the University of California Riverside, where he founded and directs the Low Residency MFA in creative writing and writing for the performing arts. Thank you,
That all sounds correct. Yeah.
It does. I actually said it out loud before I'd say it out loud because I had to cut out half the stuff. So people go look at todgoldberg.com. He's really impressive.
You didn't even touch on the modeling. It's like all those years in Milan and it's just fallen off of my bio.
I know. I reached out to a producer I worked with. He now runs a studio in LA, but he was also attached to Mad Men. And the show that we worked on, I'm not on the IMDb credits. I was like none of my names are there.
You don't exist.
I don't. It's kind of fascinating how production has erased me. But that's okay. I think it was 2 names ago. It's fine.
You slipped into a liminal space that doesn't acknowledge future romantic relationships.
I think that's probably lucky with today's day.
Yeah, well, yeah, you might be onto something.
I might be onto something. So, okay, I'd like to also tell everyone Todd had the great pleasure-ish of teaching me how to write. I took your classes at UCLA Extensions way back when.
Over 20 years ago. I was a bait. You should not have been listening to me. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was in my 30s still.
Yeah, you were a baby. But my favorite Todd quote of yours, first of all, I had taken Rob's class first. And I mentioned this with Sam Dunn. Rob at the time, he clicked his pen like this. I was like, motherfucker, you need to stop click.
That would make me crazy. Yeah.
I love him, but he was the first class I took. And I was like, I don't know if I'm learning anything because I'm so distracted. Right. But he's brilliant. And he is also another mentor because I got to meet him when he was with Gail and the house and the Long Beach, the whole thing. He's got good talent. And I was terrible. I knew I always had wanted to write, but I didn't write because my mom was like, how do you make a living? I'm like, I have no idea, obviously. So, and even in college in journalism, they're like, maybe you want to get into lit. And they were so condescending about how they said that I was like, But I did realize at 28, however old, I was like, I do want to learn how to write. So I'm going to try UCLA Extensions. I did not know the pool of people, obviously, that would be in the room.
Right.
I also didn't know how bad I'd suck. I was so bad. So you are a teacher now. You created this MFA program. Mm-hmm. One of your first comments to me was, it was about the big bad. I wrote about the big bad wolf getting out of jail early for good behavior.
Right. I remember this. Yeah.
Which isn't your cup of tea. It's not really your kind of genre, right? Which is a hot button I want to talk about too. But you were like, see this sentence? This sentence is good. Make the rest like that one. And I was like, ouch. Motherfucker.
That sounds like something I'd say.
I know, but you were right. You were right.
It's a funny thing, having run an MFA program for almost 20 years now. I founded the one at UCR in 2008, but I'd been directing the other program there for a previous year, so it'd been a while. What I found is I don't read a ton of romance, for instance, for pleasure, or I don't read a ton of hard fantasy for pleasure, but I know what's good. And I know, I can see talent outside of my entertainment preferences. And I think that's the thing that really separates really good teachers from not so good teachers is I've never looked at something and been like, well, I don't read that, so there's no way I can help you. I can help you because writing is writing. Like, it can take place on the moon. It can take place in a diner. It can be aliens. It can be humans. It doesn't matter. It can be talking dogs. It shouldn't be, but it can be talking dogs. And the rules are the same. Like, you have to have the innate ability to convey empathy. You have to be able to replicate human life in an entertaining fashion. You have to create suspense or romance or whatever it might be. And I think that's like one of those things that if you don't know it, you're never going to know it as a teacher, but also as a writer. Like, you can't teach someone empathy.
Yeah, I love that you're using that word, because out of all the 25,000 like Post-its I have in front of me of everything I want to tie together with you, is like your empathy and loyalty as a human, right? You are both things. You are really, I mean, you're super snarky at the same time. And in your characters, you have that as well, right? Like, while reading your newest work, which I devoured, like, I think my family was a little worried. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, leave me alone. I have to finish this.
I have to read about Todd's troubled people.
Well, I like it because in your essays, like, I really want to tie together. Wait, I really want to do this purposefully. I really want to tie together Only Way Out, which is your book that's coming out in December, and your essay, Let Them Bleed, because, like, whatever my issues in life might be, mine are daddy, right? Your paragraph on your mother in that essay about her cruelty and waiting for her to die for 39 years. I don't understand how someone so mean to his own children can still be living. Like, that's literally a thought I have. So to share that, and yet you are so kind and loyal to the people around you. And I find that ability to be both things fascinating.
Well, I think, growing up with bad parents makes you intimate with your own vulnerability. And if I didn't have good siblings who I love and who really took care of me, I was a baby. I'm still the baby of the family. It doesn't matter how old I am. I'm still the baby. And I'm treated as such. Having those siblings in my life that cared for me deeply and really imbued in me the sense that, hey, this is going to end. You're going to leave. And you're not going to have to stay in this place forever with mom or in these emotions. That was really important. My brother Lee is 9 years older than me. My sister Karen is 7 years older than me. And my sister Linda's only 2 years. So my brother Lee and my sister Karen graduated high school, went to college, left town when I was still just a kid, just a 9-year-old. And so to have them as sort of my de facto parents, essentially, I think gave me ability later in life to look at the situation with my mom and also with my dad to a somewhat lesser extent because he wasn't in our lives. And at this point, I'm 54 years old, to be able to look at them and realize, like, hey, they should not have been married to each other. They should not have had children. They should not have been parents. But my mom was, undiagnosed bipolar for most of her life. My dad was a sociopath. And here I am. I made it. And I have a lot more understanding of who my mom was now. Single mom raising 4 bad kids. Bad being that they were all super expressive published writers. Like, I would have been a little angry too all the time.
I get that.
And so when I wrote that essay, When They Let Them Bleed, I'd been trying to write that essay for a long, long time. It came out in a magazine in 2013 and then was in Best American that next year. I tried to write that essay about it. So for the listeners, you can find this essay on my website. It's an essay about seeing my mother die. But it's also an essay about all the times I had been party to death in strange ways as a kid growing up and how it had affected me. But most specifically in witnessing a boxer named Duke Koo Kim get killed in the ring when I was very, very young. And it wasn't like I was the only one that saw it. It was on television at like 10 a.m. on ABC. And how for so many years I had essentially what would probably be PTSD from seeing this guy get killed. And
which didn't exist back in the day. It was like, tough enough, watch this.
Yeah, in 1980 or whatever. And how it wasn't really until I saw my mother die in front of me that moment was finally eclipsed in my mind as like the most damaging thing I'd seen. But the actual result of writing that essay and having it be in that Best American, and now it's taught, in schools around the world, is talking about it has divided it. Talking about the relationship I had with my mother and the relationship I had with these experiences with people who have gone through similar things. I get emails about that essay every week.
I was reading that. I was like, that's amazing. Do you respond to them, or you just like stick them in a file? That's very nice.
I always respond to them, because it's people that are writing to me because they finally figured out that they aren't alone in the experience that they've had. And like, that's what we do as artists. Like we're sharing experiences, and to share that story with people, talking about the worst day of a person's life, generally seeing their mother die, and having it be something that someone else can get comfort in is really important. And I think about something my friend Emily Rapp once said. She wrote a book about her son dying of Tay-Sachs, The Still Point of the Turning World, which is an amazing book. And I remember she was on the Today Show being interviewed by Savannah Guthrie. Yeah. And Savannah Guthrie was sobbing the entire time that she interviewed Emily. And Emily was like, she was present and she was there, and she was receiving Savannah Guthrie's reciprocal grief. And I asked her, like, what is it like to constantly have to talk about the worst thing that ever happened to you? And she's like, it actually allows me to be more present with it, to understand that there's an existence beyond that moment, and it is these moments. And that really helped me, like, to understand, like, why sometimes writing about traumatic experiences can be important. And of course, the weird thing is, I write these crime novels that are not like that essay, or about many of the essays that I write. And the people that read these crime novels stumble on these essays, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that you had a rich inner life. Well, yeah, I contain multitudes.
You are multi-layered. I don't know. I saw a lot of parallels. I think also, so I'm obsessed with Korea. This is an obsession you probably don't know about, but it is real for me. It kind of like learning about Korea got me through COVID. I learned, it was like a history I didn't know. I felt a lot of
some people had sourdough bread and you had Korea?
I had Korea, and now I've been twice, and I want to go back again. If I could live there for a while, I would.
South. We're talking
South. Yes, obviously, South Korea, obviously. But like
I've always sort of wanted to be a despot also, and so running into North Korea.
No, I don't have. I have enough like trauma. Like when I hear you talk about, and when I read that essay, I read it multiple times because it hit different levels. Because I have, my own daddy issues, which is like what I always had in the back of my head. Like when he does finally pass away, then I'll start writing that memoir about like that dynamic. But that's not what happened. I was speaking with a memoirist last week. She's 83 and she's amazing. Judy, another Goldman instead of whatever. So Goldberg. So she was like, Holly, it's about home for you. And home is a hot button in my own life because I lost it to fire, earthquake, divorce. It wasn't safe because his addiction, like all of the things. So where yours is mom, mine is dad. And I know the fear of becoming him. Mm-hmm. Right? It's
totally. Yeah.
It's massive. Like I didn't drink for like a year when I was young because I was like, am I an alcoholic? Like, is this what an alcoholic is? And I was like, nah, I could just not drink and it's not a problem. But there's something about like Korea that when I visited, I say this often, like I have no business feeling so comfortable there. I keep trying to learn the language. I found out I'm dyslexic trying to learn the language, literally. Like, I'm like, how many coping mechanisms do I have for the amount of reading and writing that I do that I've figured out how dyslexic I am trying to learn a different language.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I also blame it on their letter Gyok, which looks like a resh, but sounds like G, which is in that guy's name, which is Kim Dok-gu. Right. When I was like, when I saw your romanization, I was like, that's not right. Whoever did that first romanization, it's like, whatever. But I feel home there, a stranger in a strange land. I don't know what that is too, or if that is about how we connect or not connect when we do have that brokenness or broken connection that allows us to be creative. I think once in a psych class, like way back in 1987, someone was like, every famous person has a tragic childhood. I was like, fascinating
Probably
stat.
right. I mean, look, you got to be intimate with like pain if you're going to be even if you're just an actor who has to be like a method actor. You know, if you've never experienced pain, then how do you know how to even fake it? You know, how do you model that behavior? I mean, great actors are capable of doing things, you know, that they've not experienced, of course. But I think particularly as a writer like yourself, um, you know, it's easy, I think, when you've gone through some stuff to put yourself in other people's shoes, irrespective of the experience that they've had. And so, you know, when I was writing about the boxer dying and looking back over the course of my life, and in my mind, he had been, you know, this man, you know, because he was boxing for a title. You know, he was 22 or whatever. It's like, God, no one is an adult at 22. There's a reason they don't let you rent cars until you're 25. Like, you should not be allowed to do. You probably shouldn't be allowed to vote until you're 30.
I kind of agree. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
Especially nowadays. I'm seeing a lot of these kids. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm beginning to think more and more. Maybe 50. Maybe until you're 50. But you know, being able to identify with other people, even though you've never walked in their shoes, like that's why we're artists. That's why, you know, someone can look at a piece of rock and carve out David from it.
Right.
Because they can imagine what something can be without ever having the proof that it could be.
So how do you mentor that now?
Write that one down.
Right,
that was a good line.
We'll have it on thing. I'm kind of curious, like, so like I said, you were like, this sentence sucks, be better. And then I actually came back. You also turned me on to Amy Bender. You turned me on to Sam Dunn and Rachel, like all these other people who you thought could help me learn. I'm like, so I know I was terrible then. I don't like, you know, not every, whatever. Like, I was definitely learning and wanting. How
old were you when you were in those classes? You were younger than me?
No, I'm older than you.
I'm 54 and you're only
56.
So we were the same age.
Yeah.
Essentially. So you were in my class. This was like 2002 or something. So I was like 31 years old and you were 32 or 33, whatever it might be. So we were basically kids teaching kids about this thing. You know, by that point I had published 2 or 3 books.
I know you hated Living Dead Girl afterward. You were like, don't read it. I'm like, of course I'm going to read it. Of course I have it.
It was just so sad. But I've really come to appreciate that book actually over the years because it's such, you know, I've been really lucky. Every book I've written has stayed in print, you know. So my first book came out 25 years ago and you can still buy it, which is crazy. And Living Dead Girl, a book that came out in 2002, people still buy it and read it and want to talk to me about it. And I barely remember the plot of it or who did the bad things. Like I have a vague sense of it.
Is it the spinning top at the end of what's that movie with?
Inception or whatever.
Yeah, that's it.
But at the time, you know, I felt like it's so sad. I don't want to put anyone else through what I was going through when I wrote that book, you know? But I recognize now, like, oh, that's a really good sort of picture of me as a man, but also as a writer, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to be, and you know what I felt about things. I mean, there's so much buried personal stuff in that book itself of stuff that I was going through that's hard for me to look at it objectively. Because it's so filled with, like, you know, all the stuff that I would later spend several years in therapy for. And
well worth it.
Several years ago, Soho Press put out a new edition of it, and they asked me to, like, if I wanted to update it, you know, go through it. And I was like, oh. And I read it again, and I was like, there's like 5 sentences I cleaned up. There's a typo I fixed. But reading it with sort of the eyes of a person who didn't really remember it, I was like, oh, this is a pretty good book. It would have been better with a 3rd act in it, but this is a pretty good book. It earned the awards it lost.
Because when I asked you about it back in the day at like one of your other book signings, you were just full of wisdom. I'm like, my brain is just going to all these quotes that I remember of yours, and I can't remember why I go to my room sometimes. But like the quote is like, you were like, no writer likes their first book that's published. And I didn't really understand. I was like, but it's such an accomplishment, right? Like, you did a dream and it was a dream, and I didn't even know that I could write that many pages, right? So for me, as a contemporary, someone my age, you actually lived your dream from the beginning. You're like, I'm going to go to be a writer and look at this shit. I'm a writer. That to me was, oh my God, it can be done.
when I think about it, it seems crazy to me because my first book came out, I was 29 years old. So I sold it when I was 27 years old. And that seems crazy, and looking back over the course of my creative life. And now, of course, for all these years, having, directed the lives of writers, including yourself, like to think that I knew anything when I was 27 years old that was worth being read by a living soul. I
think you're being too modest, and I don't know this version of you at all. I just think so.
It's just something that I've sort of, when I look back, I mean, as you can see, like there's framed photos behind me of a bunch of my books. Frankly, the wall's not big enough for all of them. And so somewhere back there, it's right there, is my first book. And sometimes I look at it and I was like, I don't have any memory of writing it. Like, I don't remember actually sitting down and typing that book. But what I do remember is that sense that everything was right in front of me. That if I did just this one thing right, if I could write a book that people wanted to read, that it was going to open the doors for me to tell the kinds of stories that I wanted to tell for the rest of my life. And like that was really weighty at 27, 28, 29 years old, like to recognize, hey, you know what, your future's here. What are you going to do? And the funny thing is, like, I think about it in relationship sometimes to athletes who, a professional athlete, they get their dreams achieved typically by the time they're 22, if they're coming out of college or something. But athletes and artists, like singers, there's a big thing about your 27th year.
Yeah.
Like
Saturn return, baby. That's some woo stuff. It's Saturn return.
Baseball players, football players, musicians, writers, they seem to, like, at 27 is when the shit comes together and they're finally able to do it and then replicate that over for the rest of their life. And so I look at that book and I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I was 27 when I started to write that book. And like that taught me how to be a professional for the rest of my life. And so I have a real deep appreciation for that experience, even if I don't quite remember it.
No, I love that. I'm like really curious about your process because, again, you are insanely prolific and you're running a program and you have literary you have so many things. Like you're not lazy by any means, right? Like you're not the kind of person who like mulls. Like when you were talking about, do I rewrite a book? I did. I'm like, I have a book that I wrote forever ago, got my agent, all that stuff. And I did the edit she wanted, and then we parted ways. And then I reread the book and I hated it. It wasn't my book anymore. So that was like an interesting experience. I have very distinct memories of when I could tell when you loved someone's writing and you had a favorite in the class. And Anjali, Alex and I would all be like looking at each other in the room, be like, oh, that's Todd's favorite this time. But like there would be a light and you would be like, I would turn him on to my agent, which is like huge, right? That's not like something, especially I think people in LA do. Right. When I left LA, people are like, oh, do you just want to meet him? He's my friend. It was very kind of different than the vibe there. But you are a professional, you do it and you're mentoring. So like, I don't know how you balance all of that. Like when I'm researching,
I don't shave.
Right? Like, it's like, I don't know how you go from like researching to reading other people's work to running a program. Like, do you have dedicated days? Do you have ideas that just like fly out of your head all day long? You're just having to catch them with like tape or something? Like, how does that work?
It's funny. So I typically have a new book every 18 months now. So you write crime fiction, there's an expectation you're going to have a book every 18 months or so. There's been periods where it's been a little longer. Like I was working on a TV show that didn't end up getting shot, but I spent a year and a half writing scripts and working on the show and didn't write books for that year. But like as a professional writer, unlike in genre fiction or not genre fiction, literary fiction, where it could be 3, 4, 5 years in between books, and it's fine. Genre fiction readers, they want you every 18 months. A writer like Michael Connelly, for instance, or my brother, they'll do 2 or 3 books a year. But that's also their main source of income is, from the books. I had always wanted to be a professor. Always. Had always wanted to do that. Yeah, always.
No.
Always.
How did I not know that?
It was, look, to have an audience staring at you, listening to every word you say with a personality like mine. Like, it was either do stand-up comedy or be a professor. And I wanted people to know I was smart.
Obviously, professor it is.
Because when I was a kid, I had profound dyslexia, profound. Like, I thought my name was Dot for most of my life.
Amazing.
Did you not know this?
I did not know. No, really, like I figured I was dyslexic because I couldn't see space between letters and I didn't see words anymore. I saw them as shapes, just the outline.
Well, and that was sort of how I was when I was very young, but I was profoundly dyslexic. I was told that I wouldn't read or write above a 4th grade level. And which I can be in that moment instantly, like saying it, and I'm sitting there and I can smell the spearmint gum on the eye doctor's breath and my mom behind him and him saying that to my mom. And my mom, for all of her faults, she was a writer, and she was like, you can't say that about my son. You can't say that. Like, we read and we write in this family. He's going to read and he's going to write. And so this was when we were still living in the Bay Area, and she had me in all these special classes at like Stanford and Berkeley with what I presume now must have been master's students, where I got trained out of the dyslexia. By the time I was 11, I could read, but I couldn't read up until about 10. And so I was in all these special classes, and they didn't know what to do with kids with dyslexia in 1979.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I learned I was dyslexic, and I was told that if you were dyslexic, you couldn't read. I was like, but I can read. So that just means I'm not.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do back then. And so I was in all these classes with kids with profound disabilities. And so I thought I had a profound disability. And I also was treated like that by, other second graders or whatever. And so I really had a chip on my shoulder from a very young age to let people know, like, hey, you thought I was dumb. I'm not dumb. You thought I couldn't read. I can read. You thought I couldn't write. I'm going to write. And I'm going to show you. And to have wonderful teachers along the way that really edified that in me gave me a strong, strong desire to be a professor. And so by the time you and I met, I'd been teaching at UCLA for a couple of years at that point. And it was only a couple of years after that I started working at UC Riverside. And then a couple of years after that I started my own graduate school. But they're related dreams. Like, I couldn't be in this position if I didn't write books. And if I didn't write books, I think I'd be an angry professor. But I really come to teaching with a lot of joy. I love it. It's a dream come true for me. And so I'm able to compartmentalize my days pretty well. When I'm working on a book or a script or an essay or whatever, I typically write in the morning. So I used to write it in the middle of the night, but
I remembered that part. Yeah.
I can't do that anymore.
We're too old for that, right?
Too old. And there's too much good TV. So, I'll write from, 10 until 4. And then, from 4 until 6, I'll handle the business of the university unless I've got a Zoom or some other meeting in the day. But I'm really good about saying, all right, I'm going to put in my 8 hours and I'm going to compartmentalize it. And I'm only going to do X thing at X time. And what that allows me to do as a writer is I don't putz around. Like, when I'm going to write, I'm going to write. That doesn't mean I don't have the anxiety. I totally still have the anxiety, but it means that when I sit down to do it, I actually fill up the page. Whether or not it's any good, who knows? But I have a pretty sure method now, which is that I write and rewrite every single day. So I start the day by rewriting what I wrote the previous day, going over those 5 or 10 pages or 2 pages, whatever it might be, and then going forward. And I always stop when I'm hot, so that I don't stop when I'm petering out and I can't figure out what to do.
Oh.
Like, I'll stop in the middle of a sentence even, so that when I pick up the next day, I'm in the middle of a sentence.
That gives me anxiety.
I know. It's probably not the perfect way to do things.
No, I love it. I think that's an amazing tip, actually. Like, but stopping in the middle of the sentence, because then you're like,
yeah, because I'm eager to get back. And so it really becomes sort of a form of muscle memory for me now. When I sit down, it's like, all right, I'm going to rewrite. That's going to take me probably 2 hours to go through these pages. And telling myself, you're only going to look at what you wrote yesterday. Not because the curse of the beginning writer is you rewrite page 1 every day of your life. And so when I finally do a sort of larger editorial rewrite of myself before it gets to my agent or my editor or whatever, it's not triage, it's just sort of taking out stitches. But that, that sort of compartmentalization has allowed me to be prolific, but also when when I have to work outside of the guidelines I give myself, I can also really turn it on. So last year, my wife Wendy had cancer, and I had a book under contract, and like, it's impossible to write funny, dark, weird stuff when you're sitting at the infusion center all day. And when, you're trying to be the person who's not losing their shit every single day. And so Wendy finally got her clean bill of health, was out of chemo and radiation like in October of last year. And my book was due in December. And I'd written 100 pages or something, 100 good pages. And Wendy was clean on October 30th. And I said, all right, well, I got to finish this book. And so I said, 2 months, let's go. And I wrote that book in 2 months. I wrote another 100,000 words in 2 months. But I have so much pent up, from the fear and the anxiety and the worry and all that stuff. When I was released of that and could just write, it was just like, ah! And so by the time December had come along, I had written, 450 pages of a book, 350 of which did not exist when on October 30th. And then I was able to go back and cut and rewrite and do all that stuff. And that's the book that you read the other day. It's coming out in.
I devoured it. I didn't read it. Yeah. I sucked it up. I have written all my favorite lines down because some of them are just, and my name is in it. So I felt so.
Oh, that's true. Your name is in it. That's
I'm somewhere in his subconscious. That or another tart name, Holly, but fine. It's fine.
So, the reality is as a professional, sometimes you just got to say, all right, well, I know how to do this. I'm just going to fucking do it. I'm just going to go. Outside of the sort of the system of writing that you've created for yourself in the past.
So thank you for talking about Wendy. I didn't know if we were going to go there or not, because that was a lot. And that was one of those things. I'm like, does he know me well enough? Do I say something? Do I not say something? While it was all happening, I was very, with my own dramas, I was like, maybe I'll just be quiet. I'll just be quiet and I'll watch from here. And then I'll just be happy that she rang the bell 3 times.
No one's ever upset to find out someone's thinking about him.
Okay, that is true.
Unless you're thinking of killing them.
Right. That is very true. So anyway, I was watching that, and I am thinking of the helplessness in that situation. So, and I was very envious of your healthcare, but that's a whole other conversation. We're not going there. We're so not going there.
The benefit of being a professor at the University of California is you get good healthcare.
Yeah. So do you have, is it your process the whole time? Are you, I'm assuming, structured and you write linear? Because I am the most non-linear. I'll have a beat outline, but some days I can't go emotionally to the space I need to go for a chapter. So I'll run and hide over here, or I'll write multiple things. So I'll have an essay going while I'm working, so I can just hide.
For the most part, I write pretty linearly, but that doesn't mean I write everything at the same time. So I'll get 100 pages into something and I realize, I need another chapter here. I need another chapter here. Chapter 5 is really chapter 2. Chapter 2 should probably not exist. So, I really allow myself the freedom to minority report stuff, really just move stuff around and rewrite and not feel too precious about stuff. I have the benefit of having a great editor for many years for the series of books, the Gangsterland books that I wrote in the short story collection, The Low Desert, Dan Smetanka at Counterpoint Press, who really encourages me to write big, and then the two of us can figure out, where the good stuff is.
I was going to ask you about that.
What that has done for me is it's given me the freedom to not be concerned that I'm going to fuck it up, that we're going to find it together. But then, the last book that I wrote, he's not the editor. This was sort of a one-off book with a different publisher, and I had to sort of apply Dan's edicts to myself and really question okay, can I edit myself the way that Dan has edited me in the past, so that when I turn this book in, the readers aren't going to notice that it reads any differently because there's a different editor or whatever. But more importantly, that it's the best of me, because what those 4 books I wrote for Counterpoint, and I'm writing another book for Counterpoint right now, what those 4 books did at Counterpoint is it changed the course of my career. Because for the first time in my life, I'd really had sort of a profound editorial experience, and it frankly raised me. It raised me as a writer, but it raised my profile as, sales wise,
Yeah.
and awards and all that stuff.
I actually gifted that series to people as gifts. I just give them the whole series.
It's the perfect holiday gift.
It is. So everyone, Gangsterland and like Gun-Toting Rabbi, come on.
It's the perfect thing. So, I don't typically write fiction and nonfiction at the same time. I used to do a lot of book criticism, and I don't as much anymore because I just don't have the time. But I do write sort of usually 2 or 3 big essays for magazines every year. So I have an essay that's coming out in Alta shortly after this airs about my own writing mentor, a man named Tom Filer, and my relationship with him and sort of these strange things that he had saddled me with as a younger person. And this is an essay, it's like 4,000 words I wrote for Alta, but I wrote it over the course of an entire year. So with my nonfiction, it's a whole different process. It's typically something I write a paragraph at a time, or a page at a time, or a line at a time, because I think dissecting your own life requires a different skill set than creating fictional lives on the page.
I love it. So part of like why I started this podcast is like, what about the creative people who are intermediate or advanced, but not like making a living or like, because there's lots of us, right? Like I sold a bunch of essays. I was on a roll with it for a couple of years. I was making $100 an essay. Like you're not making whatever.
To go back to your other question, like how to find a peer group, it really, the nice thing about the internet is it has opened opportunities that wherever you are, there's someone who has that shared affinity that lives somewhere. And so there's so many, good online programs now that you could join just to get some friends and to start doing stuff. So like where you and I were, UCLA Extension, it's primarily online now.
Really?
There's most of their classes are online. I think it's probably 70% online. So a place like the UCLA Extension Writers Program or the New School or Stanford or Berkeley, a lot of major universities have extension writing programs. And so at least what you can do is find some people online that you're going to be friendly with. Or, there's so many of these critique groups that you can find on, Facebook or whatever, or Reddit that are good. But the hard thing is like being bold enough to go out there and look for it.
Or apply.
Being willing to pay for it sometimes I think is a challenge. And like by nature, if you want to be a writer, doesn't mean typically that you're loaded. Going to writers' conferences, I think, is a crapshoot. Most of those are just money grabs by the people throwing the conferences. So, like your best bet, I think, typically is those sort of classes that you can find locally, even at a local community college. There's going to be creative writing classes that you can take where you can find other people. But you just need that one other person that's cool and that is smarter than you, that can read your work and is willing to talk to you about it. But online has created that ability to have that community. There's so many good places that are out there. But there's also so many scams out there. There's so many predators that feast on writers. I think about, you were already gone from LA when there was this writer named Anna March that was operating out here. Did you hear about her?
I don't remember her.
So I think you had already moved to Colorado by that point. That's where you were, right?
I did. Oh, no. Oh, that's so funny. That was the starter marriage divorce. Yeah. So I was in Colorado for 2 years and then I came back to LA. Yeah.
So this woman, Anna March, like she had published like a couple essays. She had been in Modern Love in the New York Times, and she moved to LA and like she sort of anointed herself like the nonfiction guru. I can get you into Modern Love. And she threw a party. I remember this very vividly. She threw a party at like the Roosevelt Hotel in LA with free alcohol. And she invited like every writer in Southern California to come to this. And so every writer's like, free alcohol? I'll go. And as soon as I met her, I saw exactly what she was. I was like, I know who you are. I know who you are. And she started like getting all these people wrapped up in her circle. And she would have these like writers' conferences in Italy. And then everyone would fly out to Italy and she wouldn't be there. She'd be like, oh, I got sick or whatever. And so like the Whisper Network started, like, there's something wrong with this person. I was like, well, yeah, she's a grifter. Like I sensed that immediately. She then got Anne Frank's Auschwitz number tattooed on her arm.
Shut up.
Yeah, because she imagined herself as if Anne Frank had grown up, that she would have been Anne Frank's daughter. Like, this was part of the story, the mythology that she was telling about herself.
Jeez.
And she started a magazine, all this stuff, and she would reach out to me all the time, and I would ignore her completely because I saw exactly what she is. And finally, like, she had scammed enough people with this Italy thing that people started looking into her. And of course, it turned out that she was this profound grifter with like 30 different names who had gone around the country defrauding NPR stations. Like, she would go into an NPR station and set up their pledge drive and steal all the money. And, it would be such a small, amount of money for, like, Bozeman NPR. She stole $9,000 or something. But it accumulated, and finally, when she got to LA and she was pulling this grift in LA, people start getting wise. And the LA Times wrote this giant expose on her, and she just went poof. But she's just one of those grifters that got caught and actually stopped. There's so many grifters that are out there that continue to do it. So, I encourage writers to actually do a thing that you might not think I would encourage them to do, which is reach out to an author and say, do you know of any critique groups that that you are like happy about, or editors that you think someone should work with? Because I've always got access to folks, and I'm always telling them, hey, you need an editor, talk to Gina Frangello. You need a class, take this class at UCLA Extension, whatever it might be. And not every author is going to respond, but nice ones will say, hey, you know what? Oh, do you live in my same town? Cal State Fullerton's got a thing, or whatever it might be. But like, you can't write in a vacuum anymore. You need to have that other person that looks at your work.
That's true.
And it's a funny thing. I write about bad people.
You do.
Like, that's my job.
But I like them. I like your bad people. How do you do that?
I try to write about bad people that are trying to be good-ish. Oftentimes good-ish, better. And I think a lot of that comes from like recognizing as a young person, like, oh, this person's not great, but they don't know that. They think they're good. They think they're good. They're the hero of their own story. And so I think I oftentimes write about bad people who think that they're good, or think that they are the arbiter of morality, or whatever it might be, because it also creates a wild card. Like, if someone believes that they're good and they're objectively horrible, they'll do anything on the page. And for me, that's the fun thing to write.
That's a fun thing to read about your work. You evoke sympathy with these people.
Bad people. Yes, I don't know how I do that.
I do. And you're unflinching with it. You're like, no, they're bad. I'm not even going to show you where they're really good. Oh, this one, all right, I won't let you bleed to death. I don't want to give anything away, right? I won't let you bleed to death. 15 years later, what did he just do to me? He didn't even finish. Or wait, I have like 3 favorite quotes in your book, and I really want to like go there. I love that the opinion on Oprah in your book, your newest book. Like, I laughed so loud when I read that. I also loved about punching the poet, which was like, because
time and proximity. Yeah.
That was like the best. And then for the emotional part, my favorite line of Rodney's is, missing is dead. This is truth, but truth and hope, they don't match so good. Because that's like so much of my adult life, right? Like, the truth and the reality of something in relationships, they're not always the same, which is why I actually don't like hope too much. I think hope is shit.
I have a friend, Michael Scott Moore, who was abducted by Somali pirates, and wrote a book about it.
Yes.
Very good book. And
kind of famous.
And then he was also, I just saw a documentary about it too, but he came to my MFA program and guest spoke, and we were sitting in my room drinking, and I was like, how did you survive it? And he said, I gave up hope. And I was like, oh, it's like, if you wake up every morning thinking you're about to be saved, every day is going to be the worst day of your life. And that like, him saying that has really resonated with me over all of these years. Just to, like, as a notion of character, and a notion of, what I sort of knew intuitively about how people are. It's like, hope might be that thing with feathers, but it's also the thing that, that can lead to delusion. Oh, I hope I'm the queen of the planet. I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I
talk
hope I
about
was
that
also Joan of Arc.
with my woo-woo thing. Like, I'm like way out there, but I'm strangely grounded and like I don't like bullshit and I absolutely hate liars. Like those are like I did a chat GPT and I asked it to give me a bio and it was hysterical because another guest had done that. And I was like,
boy.
And no, it was the warning label, which I'm about to ask you. It was like in my chat GPT, she's like, hates liars. If you're full of bullshit, leave. I was like, I don't sound soft and fuzzy at all. And I am slightly woo-woo, but I think because I lived in hope, I hoped my dad would love me more. I hoped he would pay attention to his own family. I hoped that his love would stop being so painful or cruel. And that got me nowhere. So I'm not about hope. I had this strange practicality to it. Like the only thing that's going to change is you and your outlook, and that you can control. Hope you can't.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
All right. So Todd, thank you for talking to me. There's 7 million questions. I have more. But now that I know your door is open, I'll just knock. But if you came with a warning label now in your mid-50s, awesome. Welcome to what would it be?
Gosh, my own warning label. Forgives but doesn't forget.
I'm the same.
Or acts on retribution.
Say that again. You laughed out of it.
Acts on retribution. I don't know. I mean, I think I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
What? You're wrong.
I know that
that's not right.
that I have a tendency sometimes to say exactly what I think. And that can be bracing to some people and it can be offensive to some people.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to the Holly Hughes podcast. I hope you go write something today or make yourself an espresso.